thing that hit in New Orleans. I think it was in May '95 when we got about 20 to 30 inches of water. And I saw a model presentation on Hurricane Lily that came very close to here. And all they did was slow it down in the model. And a heck of a lot of rain starts falling
Right.
places around here.
Right.
I noticed with Gustav that we only got, what, 6 or 8 inches of water here, but if you go 50 miles north of here, they got 20 or 25 inches.
That's right.
And I just wonder, does anybody ever look at what happened in Lafayette?
Yeah, well, that's the thing, you know, the hurricanes are the sexy ones because they're big, they're bad, but the slow-moving tropical storms, slow-moving tropical depressions, case in point was Tropical Storm Allison in 2001. It was a 10-day event. 9 out of those 10 days, it wasn't even a tropical storm, it was just a low that was sitting over eastern Texas. The capacity of the atmosphere and a tropical atmosphere can hold a lot of water, and especially the June, July storms, and maybe sometimes even the October storms that don't move. Movement is the key. If the storm is moving, we're very happy about that, but it's the slow-moving storms that have tremendous capacity to produce 15, 20, 30 inches of rain. Over a 6 to 8 day period, Youngsville saw 31 inches of rain with Tropical Storm Allison. There was a small tropical storm, didn't get much headlines, that hit southeast Texas back in 1981. Claudette, it produced 49 inches of rain in 24 hours. That's and the reason why I know that is it's Nolan Ryan's hometown, so that's always stuck in my head in Alvin, Texas. But these storms have a tremendous capacity to flood very large areas, and we've been very lucky, especially in Lafayette over the last 20 years or so, that we haven't had anything like a tropical storm Allison sit over the city of Lafayette. One thing I've noticed over the years, and you see it in Baton Rouge, you see it in New Orleans, everything gets concreted. And in Lafayette, we've seen a big increase in the amount of concrete that's been laid in this area over the last 10 years. Just take the last 10 years alone. And that water drains off a lot more quickly and will pool in those low areas. So, you know, maybe I put the hex on things, but prior to the 2005 season, I said the worst thing that's going to happen to Lafayette, it's not going to be a hurricane, it's going to be a major flood. And we've had 4 hurricanes since then, so maybe I should back off that statement. The amount of moisture in the air, and you can feel it out there right now in the type of weather we've had over the last couple of days. The capacity and the processes are very efficient in these thunderstorms that can produce torrential amounts of rain. And we've been pretty lucky over the Gulf Coast over the last several years with those storms. Gustav was a good case in point. In Avoyles Parish and in Rapides Parish, you're talking about coastal parishes that are 80 to 100 miles away from the coast. They had the highest winds, and they had the worst, heaviest rains and major flooding in Avoyles Parish through the Alexandria area. That's a very good point.
Do you have any other questions?
Rob, 2 or 3 years ago, there was talk about FEMA changing the flood zone and stuff, and it was a big hoorah.
Right.
But we haven't heard it too much more, and I know you were involved with that.
Yeah, well, the Army Corps of Engineers, and this is another interesting, rather sullied story in Louisiana history. Back in the early 80s, the Corps came in and started reshooting stuff and trying to get elevations and put out a set of FEMA maps based on 100-year floods. Then back in the early 90s, it was revisited again because a lot of areas that were supposedly out of the 100-year floodplain were flooded. Well, and I'm just giving Lafayette and Acadiana as an example. The Army Corps of Engineers came in and they reshot everything and they redid the maps, which put a good chunk of maybe 10 or 15% of Lafayette back below the 100-year floodplain, but politics got involved and those maps were appealed. Then recently, post-Hurricane 2005 hurricane season, that whole subject matter is being revisited, reshot, and I can talk firsthand because my house is below 100-year floodplain, although when I bought the house, house, it was above a 100-year floodplain, and I checked the charts. And the second time I went back to the zoning board, there was a map that I shouldn't know about. But, it's always the secret map. But the bottom line is, when you find out that it's going to affect you and your flood insurance is going to go from $300 a year to $1,200 a year, people are going to fight that. And I understand that. And drainage comes up as a major top agenda item in the local governments after a big heavy rain. But we have rain amnesia. If we don't have flooding for a couple of years, it's not as big of a priority. And there's just so many things that we can cover politically and sensibly in a way where we're trying to make it where people can live in a relatively safe and flood-free area. But the way it rains around here, I don't care if you're in the 500-year plain, you are subject to flooding in this area, period.
We'll have to check the map and see where campus is, because it just floods all the time.
Train the chairs. Pretty bad. Right.
All right. Well, if nobody has any more questions, I'd like just, you can't get out of this. You've got to predict the season for us.
Oh, you don't want to hear what I have to say with respect to that. It's going to be a very busy season. Some of the things that we look at, heat capacity of the ocean, upper level winds, is an El Nino present? Just about every factor that gives us a green light for busy seasons out there. You hear about Dr. Gray's forecast and Dr. Klotzbau's taken over from Gray, but Gray still gets the name recognition. They do a very good job. NOAA puts out their forecast and they give us this big range. Normally, in any given year, on the average over the last 40 or 50 years, we see 10 named storms in the Atlantic Basin, 6 become hurricanes, and 2 potentially major hurricanes. Well, if you go back just to 1995, our average has been closer to 15 named storms, and about 6 or 7 8 hurricanes, and about 3 major hurricanes. And this year, the forecast is for anywhere between, I think the range was 16 to 23 named storms, 8 to 12 hurricanes, and 5 to 6 or 7 major storms. And it could be a very busy year. 1995 was very busy, but no landfalls. There were 8 or 9 major hurricanes, but none of them, they all stayed in the Atlantic. It just takes one badly placed storm in your backyard to make it a very busy hurricane season. But with that being said, last year we had El Nino. El Nino's gone. El Nino increases the wind shear and knocks down the number of storms and the intensity of the storms. That factor is absent. The Atlantic sea surface temperatures are as hot as they've ever measured them in satellite-derived time, meaning that the satellites that have been watching temperatures in the far central and eastern Atlantic over the last 30 years, we have the hottest numbers we've seen. So heat capacity's up. So with all that being said, it's going to be at least 2, maybe 3 times as busy as it was last year. And last year was a breeze. So it will be busy, and the analog years that they look back, and conditions are similar to what year? 2005 and 1969. So those are big blockbuster years for the Gulf of Mexico as well. So with that being said,
Go to Lowe's or
cross your fingers. Right.
Get your batteries. All right, I want to thank both of you gentlemen for coming out this evening and sharing your knowledge and your experience and your stories with us. I really appreciate that. Please, like I said earlier, sign up, put your name down on the sign-in sheet if you have not already done so, and join us next month. Next month, we're talking about boat building traditions in Louisiana, and we'll have Dr. Ray Brasser and Farron Surratt of Vermilionville.